Alrighty, Friday, June 28th, last trading day of the quarter, last trading day of the month and the week, of course. And it was quite volatile. As we had talked about as early as last Friday, expecting that near term range to really develop Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. Pretty much exactly what we saw coming into yesterday, an attempt to break out of that near-term range, and then Friday, today, all of the volatility with what could be considered a break of this near-term range to test some upside resistance points. You could see almost a perfect test of that upside level of interest that we had for today, the 20,270 level. Swiftly rejected. Take a look at that hourly candle. Take a look at that. If you're trying longs down through here, questionable, right? Take a look at that higher time frame analysis. Got to be careful with those plays. For Monday, what we want to see here essentially is how price is going to be trading versus that 950 pivot, right? Pretty much in the same spot, round trip. Now, one thing I am looking at and thinking about for next week, short week, and the following week, next couple of weeks to come, is the fact that this has kind of what we've seen here over the past week is essentially a little bit, especially today, really kicking it off, but a range expansion move, right? So I'm looking at it, essentially how I'll be treating the current structure is just like this. Intermediate term range high, right? And then we have our intermediate term range low. Little bit different than what we were looking at for this week. Pretty much just a near term range. This was kind of the focus for this week, right? And ES does have a bit of the cleaner setup. So that'll make more sense when we jump over to ES. But this is essentially what I'm going to be looking at for the next couple of weeks. Treating 800 down here as key support, and then this area up through here as key resistance. And then when we kind of break it down like this, the setup and the rejection up into this area starts to make a bit more sense, doesn't it? You have the near term. Essentially, think of this as like kind of almost like a micro structure within the big picture setup here. So you have a breakout of the near term range price. Where's it going to trade? It's going to trade up into these highs, quite obviously, which is where we had that upside level of interest. Sellers step in pretty heavy there, right? Pretty heavy. Now, once you start to see this 2080, our prior breakout point, really failing, that's when you want to be extremely cautious, because like we talked about this morning, kind of ties in with the idea that we talked about this morning. If that near-term range breakout point fails, where's price going to go? It's going to go down into that near-term range low. So for Monday here on NQ, let me clear off some of these drawings, clean up the chart a little bit. Depending on where we're at Monday morning, I'll either be looking at the reaction versus this 950 key pivot, treat this as like a mid-range pivot, or if that selling activity does continue during the Monday morning session, like to see the action down versus 800. So one scenario would be like this, right? Or potential failure down here, just to bounce versus the 800. As of right now, like I said, continue to treat this like a range. If we take a look at the daily chart, what's happening? Sideways, right? Sideways. Now, if this low starts to fail, that would be more significant, definitely. And I don't mean like a little look below and then a bounce, but a true failure of this low would definitely be more significant. But as of right now, this is just a range, right? Let's bounce over to the weekly chart. So we can see that we're almost entirely within the prior week's bar, right? We did have a very bearish bar on last week, rather. Look below, believe that was Tuesday. Is that Tuesday? Yeah. Tuesday, look below, and then Wednesday and the rest of the week, reclaim of that 900 back within that prior weekly bar. So then you get the rally today on the back of some data to test the last week volume point of control. See that little blue line right through there? That 20K 200 area, and rollover. And again, take a look at that hourly candle. I think Mish had posted that in the Traders Think Tank. Looking quite bearish there with that massive wick, right? This is why we always want to be looking at higher time frame analysis, making sure that the trade that we're taking aligns with what the bigger picture is showing us. So overall, some really good action today, quite volatile. Next week, expecting a slow week. Wednesday is a half day. Thursday, the market is closed for 4th of July, Independence Day. And then so Friday's most likely going to be a very slow day, right? Post-holiday, most likely people are just going to wrap that into like a long weekend. So I wouldn't be expecting much action on Friday. So some things to look forward to next week. Let's jump over to ES. So this setup actually is much clearer, in my opinion. Look how this hourly candle is starting to shape up, right? Let me draw on this. What we had was this previous range, near-term range, right? So price breaks out, actually triggers that breakout up through the 55.55. Okay, breaks out of that kind of, call it a microstructure, and trades up into this high right through here, where we should expect sellers. Price rolls over, we're back into the previous breakout point, no real bid there, at least on the hourly chart. And then back into that prior range. Okay, well, at that point, it's a failed breakout if we're still treating this like a near-term range. Failed breakout from failed moves comes fast moves, so you're going to get a pretty quick retest down into the low, in this case actually undercutting the prior day low, but finding some good support here versus that key pivot, right? I actually really like this hourly candle coming into the close here. This could set us up nicely for Monday's action on ES. So we tested the key pivot already, right? And if we're going to be continuing to treat this like a near-term range, well, price should bounce versus this key pivot as it is currently. So what I'll be looking at Monday, depending on where we're poised to open, is either, again, the reaction versus today's low down through here, or this 55.30 level of interest, looking for that continuation of this hourly bar. That's going to depend pretty heavily on what that Sunday evening and Monday morning action looks like. But as of right now, this is your current structure. It's a much wider range now. But this is it right through here. That's it. I call this an intermediate term range. This was a near term, right? And the difference is that now we're kind of focused on that hourly chart, right? When we kind of got to zoom out more, like if we jump under the 15-minute and you start to lose sight of the details, all right, it's probably time to zoom out a little bit, change the time frame. So we're on the hourly now, intermediate term range. So range trading, as far as I'm concerned, does continue. That's pretty much a wrap for the session recap here. Overall, some really good action, right? Early in the sesh. I did like the opportunities better in NQ. I posted that trade recap. If you missed it, go take a look. Give you a good sense of the thought process behind that long setup. If you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to shoot me a DM. Being that it is the end of the month and the end of the quarter, I recommend that everyone does end of month review, end of quarter review. Just kind of get a sense of what goals you have for July, any repeat issues that you had in June, anything to really take with you as concrete lessons from June into July. You know, if you had repeat problems, some type of behavioral pattern that continues to come out within your trading, you want to create a rule or some type of framework to prevent you from doing that. And then the goal from there is to just follow the rule, right? This is kind of a basic overview of how to correct challenges within your own trading. And so that can be an effective way to have a even better July and an even better Q3 than June or Q2, right? Always want to be working on that improvement. So hope everyone had a good sesh, a good week, some pretty good action this week. I think the market traded incredibly technically, particularly ES. The pattern here was quite clear, in my opinion, a little bit easier than NQ. If you guys have questions about anything, like I said, feel free to shoot me a DM. Otherwise, I'll see you Monday morning. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. Later.